We do know that there was a relationship between John Smith and Pocahontas. Was it romantic? Unlikely, but we can't be sure.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 20 historical inaccuracies that many people believe.
It cannot be overstated how consequential this document was.
Number 20. Pirates regularly buried their treasure. Everybody loves a good pirate story, not to mention the thrills of an adventure in search of lost treasure. Unfortunately, this image of swashbuckling pirates either digging holes to bury their loot or to find more is mostly fiction.
The fact is, there is no case in history that anyone knows of pirates burying treasure and drawing maps with X's on.
Real pirates had better things to do with their treasure, like spending it immediately. Most pirate crews divided their haul as soon as possible, and there is almost no evidence that they buried it for safekeeping. The myth likely stems from isolated stories, such as Captain Kidd's rumored stash, or has been popularized through tales like Treasure Island. So next time someone says X marks the spot, give them a history lesson.
Pirates very rarely buried treasure. They preferred to spend it.
Number 19. Brothers Grimm wrote many famous fairy tales. From Cinderella's glass slippers to The Witch of Hansel and Gretel. We've all heard about the tales written by the Brothers Grimm, except they didn't. Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm weren't writing brand new stories. Instead, they were collecting old folklore. Their actual contribution was more about preserving the oral German storytelling traditions that had been passed down over several generations.
It inspired the Grimms to collect folk and fairy tales that had until then only been handed down orally.
Today, we are well acquainted with these stories through adaptations such as Disney's animated and live-action versions. The early versions of these tales were much darker and more violent. So, while the brothers deserve their laurels for compiling the fairy tales, they were more likely spooky story editors as opposed to folklore writers. Number 18. Gladiators always fought to the death. We've seen Hollywood's gladiatorial bloodbaths, but real Roman gladiator fights weren't always a death match. Gladiators were expensive to train and maintain. They were otherwise prized athletes and too costly to lose in a random duel. Too much death is not good for business. Most gladiatorial matches were fought according to rules, with referees present, and the option for surrender was available. The thumbs up or thumbs down gesture associated with life or death in gladiator combat is popularized by art and film. It was never a thing. Many gladiators had long careers. They won fame, fortune, and even freedom. Brutal fights existed, but matches to the death were one myth that the Colosseum didn't condone.
Champions of Rome!
Number 17. Princess Anastasia's disappearance. The idea that Anastasia Romanov, the daughter of the last Russian Tsar, Nicholas II, somehow escaped her family's tragic fate has been around for nearly a century.
Hurry, Anastasia!
Her story has spawned legends, imposters, and even animated musicals. But the harsh truth is that she did not survive. The remains of the Romanov family were discovered in 1991. This did not include Anastasia and her brother.
The Tsar and Tsarina, 3 of their daughters, and 4 attendants are identified. But 2 of the youngest royal children aren't among the dead.
That missing piece kept the mystery of her survival alive until 2007. DNA testing of a second grave identified the missing children. The fantasy of the lost princess was closed by modern science. Still, Anastasia's story remains a fascinating blend of myth, fiction, and tragedy.
Anastasia, the youngest Romanov daughter, did not escape the firing squad.
Number 16. Betsy Ross and the American flag. The American flag is one of the most recognizable symbols in the world. Its creation has often been attributed to one Elizabeth Betsy Ross, a Philadelphia seamstress. Betsy would be immortalized in a commemorative stamp in 1952, marking the bicentennial of her birth. The only problem is, she was not the actual designer. The more likely designer was Francis Hopkinson, one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence. Francis would bill Congress for his work on the flag and left behind a paper trail that spanned several years as he pursued payment. Betsy may have stitched some flags, but the legend of her most incredible creation is more myth than fact. Number 15. Emancipation Proclamation. The Emancipation Proclamation never actually ended slavery. Issued by President Abraham Lincoln in 1863, it didn't free anyone.
That preliminary proclamation said you have 100 days to either come back into the Union or I'm going to free your enslaved laborers.
This is because it only applied to Confederate states that were still in rebellion, and not to the slave-holding border states loyal to the Union. To make matters worse, nobody took the decree seriously.
The Emancipation Proclamation was a fit and necessary war measure, but when the war was over, it was no longer a legal measure.
The actual legal death of slavery only came 2 years later, in 1865, when the 13th Amendment was made to the United States Constitution. Lincoln's proclamation was a turning point and a bold political move. It just didn't legally abolish slavery on its own. History classes may skip this footnote, but we don't.
He is determined that this amendment is going to pass Congress, and it does.
Number 14, how we remember the Alamo. The Alamo is a symbol of Texas pride, but the real story is a bit more complicated and a lot darker.
The Alamo is part of American culture, the most widely visited historical site in the state of Texas.
The Battle of the Alamo had more to do with slavery than just Texan independence. Mexico banned slavery in 1829. This did not go well with American settlers in Texas, who continued to keep slaves. The 1836 battle was in part about defenders fighting to preserve the rights of slaveholders. The brutal siege ended after 13 days when Mexican forces won the battle.
And this is the imagery that most Americans have, that they were overrun by these brutal Mexican forces.
Unfortunately, they would be defeated later at the Battle of San Jacinto. The winners continued to use slaves. Remember the Alamo sounds noble, but once you dig deeper, you find the darker truth beneath the slogan.
And so they raced into subsequent battles saying, "Remember the Alamo."
Number 13, cowboy hats. When you picture a cowboy, you probably imagine men on the American frontier wearing those wide-brimmed Stetsons and riding a horse along a dusty trail.
The cowboy hat is the most iconic piece in the Western attire.
Guess what? Real cowboys had no interest in wearing cowboy hats. They were too bulky. Instead, cowboys in the 1800s preferred to wear bowler hats. These hats stayed on their heads during windy conditions. Even better, they were cheaper. Photos of gunslingers like Wyatt Earp show him in practical headgear. The cowboy hat is undoubtedly an iconic accessory, but not historically based. We have Hollywood westerns and marketing to thank for that.
Well, then you're going to look good. You're going to feel better. And you get a woman.
Number 12, Benjamin Franklin and birds. Ben Franklin didn't like the bald eagle. He felt it had a bad moral character. It's one of those fun facts that isn't quite fact. In a letter to his daughter, Franklin jokingly criticized the bald eagle and expressed his preference for the turkey, deeming it to be a, quote, much more respectable bird. That did not mean he fully endorsed the bird. He didn't like the turkey either. Franklin was, in modern terms, a troll. His statement was more satire than political stance. To this day, the bald eagle has stuck around, bad character and all. The turkey, on the other hand, takes the cake, or instead becomes one on Thanksgiving. Number 11, Pocahontas and John Smith. Pocahontas was 10 years old when John Smith arrived in Virginia. Furthermore, Pocahontas wasn't even her real name. Their supposed romantic relationship, that is all Disney.
Pocahontas.
What? What did you say?
My name is Pocahontas.
The absolute truth can be derived from oral histories of the Mattaponi tribe and various other sources. Pocahontas did help build peaceful relations between her people and the settlers, but her relationship with John Smith is a myth. She initially married Kocoum, the younger brother of the chief of the Potomac tribe. Pocahontas was later forcibly taken to England, where she married John Rolfe, not Smith.
Pocahontas converts to Christianity, taking the name Rebecca. She marries a settler, John Rolfe.
The idea of a cross-cultural romance was invented to romanticize colonialism. Sadly, there was no windswept love ballad by Grandmother Willow, just historical distortion.
Listen with your heart, you will understand.
Number 10, Washington's wooden teeth.
George Washington suffered from horrible dental disease for many, many years.
It plagued him his entire life.
Don't believe the myth that George Washington didn't do all he could to prevent the loss of all of his teeth.
He's pouring money into dentistry. He's getting teeth pulled.
At least Washington could afford better than the wooden false teeth that most people believe to be his signature. He had 4 dentures made from premium material for the time, certainly not including wood.
Animals, cows were used. Their teeth were filed down.
It is generally assumed that Washington had stained his preferred ivory sets, giving them a wooden appearance. You'd think he would keep these costly chompers in better condition. Perhaps the first president of the United States had other priorities. Number 9. Let them eat cake.
The royal family was held very much to blame for the famine that was afflicting the country.
Marie Antoinette supposedly sealed her fate during the French Revolution when she suggested that peasants end their famine with cake or brioche.
Such nonsense. I would never say that.
Of course, those who think this reflected how out of touch she was with her subjects are out of touch with history. Qu'il mange de la brioche was coined by Jean-Jacques Rousseau's autobiography, attributed to an unidentified, quote, great princess. The book was released when Antoinette was only 9 years old and still living in Austria. Nonetheless, revolutionaries inspired by Rousseau's philosophies misappropriated the quote in campaigns to defame the queen. Still, to this day, many believe Let Them Eat Cake says everything about the elitism that led to Antoinette's execution.
She certainly spent a great deal too much money on dresses and jewels, but she really didn't say anything quite so callous.
Number 8. Viking helmets. Medieval Norse raiders were known to be devils on the battlefield. But of all the fearsome helmets that these Vikings wore in combat, there's no evidence that any of them had horns. This belief goes back to the artistic liberties among 19th century Romanticists in Scandinavia and Germany. It's believed that the visual was widely popularized by Richard Wagner's Ring of the Nibelung cycle. The horned helmet myth stuck in pop culture that quickly. Now, 21st century artistic depictions of Vikings are starting to undo it. Research does suggest that Scandinavians wore horned helmets for ceremonies during the Nordic Bronze Age. Of course, as skilled as Vikings were in battle, such headgear would be too impractical there. Number 7. Napoleon complex. Napoleon Bonaparte led France out of a revolution into one of the most powerful empires in the world.
The English forget that my strength is speed. In 20 days, I will be in the heart of Germany.
It sounds like he was compensating for something. Well, this is the idea behind the Napoleon complex, which attributes a man's ego trips to insecurity about his short stature. The thing is that Napoleon stood somewhere between 5'6" and 5'10". That was actually above average height for a man of this era. Belief to the contrary originated from British propaganda, which belittled the empire's nemesis by literally belittling him. The campaign may have had no real impact on Napoleon's conquest, but it seriously distorted his legacy. With greater sensitivity to history and height, the public is finally starting to reject this tall tale.
And though he never achieved his dream of conquering Europe, he undoubtedly left his mark on it.
Number 6. The British are coming.
Let's admit it. We love Paul Revere because he's America's first action hero.
The American Revolution might never have been had the Massachusetts Provincial Congress not been warned of a British attack. This heroic image is enhanced by Paul Revere shouting, "The British are coming," throughout his ride from Boston to Concord.
Thanks to Revere, America isn't caught napping at the outset of the war that will win our independence.
Well, that wouldn't be particularly smart espionage. Revere and William Dawes, in fact, covertly passed the intelligence to other riders before Revere was apprehended in Lincoln. There were as many as 40 messengers by the time word reached Concord. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow just found it more romantic to credit the original riders in his 1860 poem, Paul Revere's Ride. The idea that Revere galvanized a Massachusetts devoid of Crown loyalists is pretty absurd. In playing to patriotic ego, however, Longfellow's poem is popularly taken as fact.
This idea of him riding alone, the dead of night, sounding the alarm, raising the troops, is the most enduring feature of this myth that we've really bought into as Americans.
Number 5. Rosa Parks' seat.
Rosa Parks sat down on the bus and began
what we know today as American civil rights movement.
The civil rights movement flourished with Rosa Parks' arrest on a segregated bus in Montgomery, Alabama. Many believe that her act of defiance was the first of its kind. More naively, some think Parks took a white person's seat first. She actually was seated in the black section of the bus, but broke Jim Crow laws by refusing to defer her seat after a white passenger section reached capacity.
When Rosa Parks decided to stay seated in December of 1955, I was 2.5 years old. I know that what Rosa Parks did made a huge difference in my life.
Black people, of course, were entirely barred from white-only spaces. Though this particular incident sparked the Montgomery bus boycott, Irene Morgan, Claudette Colvin, and others did the same thing earlier.
Lasting over a year, the Montgomery bus boycott was an overwhelming success and inflicted substantial revenue losses.
Parks nonetheless deserves praise for showing how many people were willing to take a stand against the lie of separate but equal by staying seated. Number 4. Thomas Edison invented the light bulb.
It's not hard to invent a light bulb that lasts for just 15 seconds. The problem is to get it to last for many, many hours.
American inventor Thomas Edison accrued more than 1,000 U.S. patents, with the incandescent light bulb being considered his masterpiece. While one can reasonably assume he didn't come up with the idea entirely, the invention of the light bulb is complicated.
People around the world were working on electric light. People announcing to the press, "Eureka, I have it." But, the press was kind of focused on Edison.
The concept of producing light with an electric arc was first realized by Humphrey Davy in the early 1800s. Edison's carbonized filament design may be considered groundbreaking, but English inventor Joseph Swan coincidentally patented a near-identical model at the same time. Inquiries found no evidence of intellectual infringement. Edison and Swan ultimately merged their companies to help spread light bulbs throughout the world. Though American mythos gives Edison all the credit, all visionaries need some guiding light.
There was a sense in which we were entering a brave new world.
Number 3. Einstein's math grades.
Like many great innovators, Einstein was a rebel, a loner, but deeply curious.
It's hard to overstate Albert Einstein's brilliance. His academic underdog story, on the other hand, has been inflated by the notion that one of the greatest scientists of the modern age flunked math and science in secondary school. His published final report card shows a 6 in algebra, geometry, and physics. That was the lowest grade possible at the Cantonal School of Aarau before Einstein's day. During his last year, the school inverted its grading system, meaning that Einstein got the highest marks in the fields he went on to reinvent. Granted, he did have trouble with organic sciences. Still, with a history score to match math and physics, Einstein's grades alone are a lesson in the importance of proper research. Number 2. Salem witch burning. America's puritanical foundation was first shaken in 1692. Colonial Massachusetts had to reassess its values after the mass conviction and execution of people, mostly in Salem, for supposedly practicing witchcraft.
Anyone and everyone among them might be a witch and Satan's willing helper.
At least they didn't import Europe's common practice of burning convicted witches at the stake. 19 of the 30 people found guilty were hanged. Giles Corey was crushed with stones for refusing to enter a plea to his charge. American folklore has since conflated these trials with European ones, which regularly featured fatal witch tests and executions by immolation. The Salem witch trials were more solemn than the sensational fables. Whatever people have come to envision with this infamous episode, it's more important to remember the tragedy of superstition and neighbors' betrayal.
We've come a long way from here. Due process, presumption of innocence, burden of proof. Criminal law became more civilized in the time following the Salem witch trials.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into Settings and switch on your notifications. Number 1. Pyramids built with slave labor.
Though ancient Egyptian civilization lasted for nearly 3,000 years, its kings only built huge tombs like these for a few centuries.
Ancient Egypt built so much of modern civilization. Many systems have also been inspired by the premise that this world was partly built on slave labor. The mighty pyramids of Giza are particularly associated with such atrocities, but overwhelming archaeological evidence suggests that slavery was not involved in their construction. It sure wasn't aliens either. The builders were ostensibly skilled Egyptian laborers who were paid fairly. Ancient Greek historian Herodotus spread the theory that these laborers were enslaved. This myth was finally cemented by misinterpretations of the Book of Exodus, which never explicitly claims that the Israelites built the pyramids that predate their culture. With modern historians enabling us to admire the Giza pyramids guilt-free, they're also a monument to the power of historical inaccuracy. History is not always written by the winners. It can also be written by Hollywood. Drop your favorite false fact in the comments and hit that like and subscribe button for more content that debunks the bogus.
The implication is, to John Smith, that he could have made a difference and did not.